How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel. In January this year, I did a video on cheap hot hatchbacks that you could buy for under £10,000. You guys enjoyed that video, but 10 grand is still quite a lot of money, so I thought why not drop it down to 5 grand and see what we could find. So in this video, we're looking at 10 cheap hot hatchbacks that you can buy for under £5,000, nice and simple. If this video gets to 1,000 likes, I will try my absolute hardest to do this exact same video at under £2,000. I don't know if it's gonna be possible, but I will give it a go. Sub 2k, hot, maybe warm hatches, 1,000 likes and I'll do it. Remember that I'm in the UK, so prices in other countries may differ, and remember that whenever you buy any second-hand car, maintenance, repairs, insurance, road tax, all that stuff is important to remember. Also, don't forget that I've ordered these cars from slowest to fastest from 0 to 60 to reduce bias on my side. If you enjoyed the video, remember to hit the like button, subscribe as well if you're new. Without further ado, let's get into the video. But before we get into the video, I want to say a massive thank you to the sponsor of this video. They've been here before and they're back again. It is BOTB, or Best of the Best. Now, BOTB is a company that I have used personally in the past, and I really do rate their platform. They are a dream car competition company that give away 2 cars every single week. That is part of their midweek car competition and their dream car competition on a Sunday. And as well as recently lowering all of their ticket prices, they've also added £50,000 cash onto every single car in their dream car competition. There are over 150 cars to choose from, and tickets start at just £1.50. And some of my favourite cars on there are cars like this stunning Lancia Delta Integrale Evo for just £2.90 per ticket. Mate, a Ford Escort Cosworth for £2.65 a ticket, that is sick. And of course, one of my favourites as well, an Audi R8 V10 for £4.35 per ticket. BOTB has given away £38 million worth of prizes, over 2 decades worth of winners, which is just insanity. And why not try and make that next winner be you? So go and check out the links in the description, enter at botb.com today. All the links in the description, in the pinned comments, etc. Again, a massive thanks to BOTB for sponsoring this video. I really do appreciate it, and I'd appreciate you guys going and checking them out. Let's kick this video off with a car that probably has my personal favourite engine from this list, the second generation Ford Focus ST, with its 2.5 litre turbocharged inline 5, which puts out 221 brake horsepower, taking the car from 0 to 60 in 6.6 seconds. It comes as either a 3 or a 5 door depending on what you'd prefer, and sources that engine from Volvo. One thing I'd note is that the hotter Mark II RS has been going up in value, particularly because of Ford cancelling future Focus RS models. As a result of this, plus the fact that pretty much all fast forwards end up being classics, I reckon the Mark II ST will in the future be a reasonable bet in terms of long-term values. It has a more aggressive body than the standard Focus, along with the larger alloys, bigger brakes and sportier interior. I recommend going for an ST2 or ST3 spec as their higher spec, and the ST3 gets leather Recaro seats both front and rear, which is a nice option. Also worth noting, people tune these to around 300 brake horsepower relatively easily, which would easily make this car jump to the top of this list. These are listed for a minimum of around £3,500 in ST3 spec, and for 5 grand you're looking at a 2007 model with around 70,000 miles on the clock. There are some known issues according to specialists, like split cylinder lines, a failing solenoid boost valve, and alternator issues on early models. The clutch is also known to be quite weak, and some have had corrosion issues. But all in, not a bad car in terms of reliability if you believe owners on forums. Next up is the FN2 Honda Civic Type R, which isn't everyone's favourite when it comes to Type R lineage, but it's still got good performance from that 2 litre inline 4 engine, which makes 198 brake horsepower and gets the car to 60 in 6.4 seconds. This was based on the 8th generation Civic on release, but was the 3rd gen Type R. In Japan it was offered as a 4-door saloon, but we never got that in Europe. Instead we got the 3-door hot hatch you see here. It actually has an entirely different chassis, which is the same as that on the Jazz that followed, and the positioning of the internals are different too. It received the Hot Hatch of the Year award from Top Gear magazine in 2007, but many reviews noted the car doesn't handle as well as the previous generation. I've been in one and it feels reasonably quick, but I kinda get what they mean. That said, I think as a package it looks and feels sporty both outside and in, and it feels a lot more modern than the EP3. £3,000 is around the minimum you'll find these listed for, and for 5 grand you're looking at a 2007 model with around 80,000 miles on it. Many owners note creaking from the chassis as a key issue, but it's probably just a couple of bolts in the front subframe that need greasing. Seals are known to leak around the door and windscreen, and and there are known synchro issues with third gear dropping out too, but overall it's known to be relatively reliable. In 8th we have the first generation Audi S3, which hosts the classic 1.8 litre turbocharged inline-4, which makes 221 brake horsepower, taking the car to 60 in 6.4 seconds, matching the Civic. This is based on the first generation A3, which is very much on its way to being a modern classic in my opinion, as the S3 was the top of the line. Of course, for sub 5k you're not looking at perfect examples, as many of these have had plenty of miles put onto them, which reflects in those available for under 5k. The lowest you'll find them listed for is around £2,500. The car has a Haldex all-wheel drive system which provides power to the back wheels when needed for traction, though it mostly stays in front-wheel drive. You can get a Haldex controller to change this if you want. Some key features include the 17 or optional 18-inch alloys, Recaro seats, and the Bose speaker system. Make sure you buy an example from 2001 onwards, as before this they had less power to ensure the car wasn't faster than the TT that had just been released. Problems with the 1.8T have been well documented, and it's a relatively cheap engine to work on if and when things do go wrong, which is a benefit. Some owners suggest upgrading the suspension, as the handling has sometimes been criticised, especially on models that have now got very worn suspension parts. Bilstein B12s are particularly popular. Next up we have the big bottoms Renault Megane RS, which has a 2 litre turbocharged inline-4 engine, putting out 221 brake horsepower as well, which gets it to 60 marginally quicker than the S3 at 6.3 seconds. I think the shape of this car has aged like a fine wine. It's very much on its way to modern classic status in my opinion. You get either leather or cloth sports seats with 18-inch alloys in front of the Brembo brakes for added stopping power. If you want more luxurious features, go for a Luxe model which has a few more creature comforts. Now you can't get the top spec R26R for your 5k, however while £4,000 is the minimum you'll get one of these for, you might even find a trophy for under £5,000 with around 75,000 miles on it. From a driving perspective, it's known to behave really well, and you often see them on track days with some upgraded suspension, brakes, and sometimes a roll bar. That said, you might have to look past the quite cheap feeling interior. On reliability, it's actually alright, with owners and specialists noting the engine and turbo are both relatively strong, as is the transmission if it hasn't been money shifted on track too much. However, owners also know that it's quite intensive on brakes and tyres, so factor this into your budget. I was not particularly happy when the Impreza moved from a saloon to a hatchback for the third generation, but I'm glad I can incorporate the WRX into this video with its 2.5 litre turbocharged Boxer 4, which puts out 226 brake horsepower and will manage 0 to 60 in 6.3 seconds. In the US, UK and Japan, the car remained the Impreza WRX, while in other markets it dropped the Impreza name. That engine is mostly the same as the previous generation, which is not great news as it's not known for reliability. In fact, of all the cars on this list, this is the one I would recommend the least from a reliability perspective, with some articles going as far as naming it the worst engine ever. That said, the manufacturer stated 0 to 60 is debated, as magazine tests have achieved times as low as 4.7 seconds, which is insane, but this was specifically with models released from 2009 onwards, after the company made a bunch of changes to make the car sportier. All in though, I would note they don't look very hot hatch-like, mostly as the more aggressive body stylings were reserved for the STI. These are only just available for under £5,000, with £4,500 being the minimum price I could find. For £5,000 you'll get a 2008 model with around 80,000 miles on it. If you're enjoying the video, just wanted to remind you, 1,000 likes and I'll do the same video at under £2,000 instead. And if you haven't already, do hit the subscribe button. I'm aiming to hit 100k this year and we're getting there, slowly, but we are getting there. Last time I did a hot hatch video, the Seat gang were out in force in the comments, upset that I'd forgotten the Leon Cupra R. This was a very fair challenge, so to make up to you all, I've included the Leon Cupra non-R in this video, which has a 2 litre turbocharged inline-4, putting out 236 brake horsepower, which gets it from 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds. It sits on the same platform as the Mark V Golf, and in Cupra spec came standard with 18-inch alloys, larger brake discs and calipers, sport seats, and generally sportier styling overall when compared with the standard model. This is a massive oversimplification, but the car is basically a Mark V Golf GTI, as they share pretty much exactly the same specs and performance thanks to sharing the same engine. So if you're into Mark V GTIs but want something a little different, this is the car for you. Having been in one, they feel typically like a VW Group car on the interior, and they have very surprising torque considering. £4,500 is the lowest I could find these listed for, but there are a fair few available for under 5k, but all sit at around the 100,000 miles mark. DSGs are known to go wrong if oil changes have been ignored and fuel pumps have had failures in the past. However, outside of that, quality is generally pretty good and owners suggest they're reasonably robust. Just missing out on the top 3, we have the highly impressive Vauxhall Astra VXR, which is a 2-litre turbocharged inline-4 which makes 236 brake horsepower and gets the car to 60 in 6.2 seconds, meaning it matches the Seat Leon Cupra exactly. The reason why I've put it ahead of the Cupra is because it's cheaper, starting at around £2,500 at the lower end, and for £5,000 you get a 2006 example with around 75,000 miles on the clock. It came with the Astra H generation, and in Europe it was named the Opel Astra OPC instead. Wherever you were, it came with sportier body stylings as well as Recaro seats on the interior, as is customary for most hot hatches on this list it would appear. It also gained a 6-speed manual box as well as 18-inch alloys. But the real party piece of this car isn't any of this sporty nonsense. It's actually massively capable, and in 2008 it held the record for the fastest hot hatch around the Nürburgring, hence a special Nürburgring edition was created. This is in part thanks to its Lotus developed suspension, as it came in around the similar time to the VX220. It's also been known to be a great platform for tuning if you're that way inclined. On reliability, valve stem seals are known to be weak and conrods can't handle much more than the standard output. If the turbo hasn't been serviced on schedule, it can produce less power than you'd like, and the 1st and 6th gear bearings are weak too. Next up we have the Mark V Golf R32, which has the biggest capacity engine on this list, a 3.2 litre VR6, putting out 246 brake horsepower which takes from 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. While the Mark I R32 is soaring in value, the Mark II has pretty much reached rock bottom, and just a few of them have dipped below the 5k mark, so expect higher mileages on these. You could of course go for a Mark V GTI instead and sacrifice some performance, but get a car that's probably in better shape. The engine is the same as that in the Mark IV, but with an extra 10 horsepower or so, and if 0 to 60 is what you're after, it's worth going for a DSG over the manual, as there's 0.3 seconds difference between the two. It also maintains the Haldex all-wheel drive from the previous gen, and 18-inch alloys come as standard too. The interior is pretty nice too, with once again Recaro offering the optional bucket seats, and you get a sportier flat-bottomed wheel and aluminium pedals and the likes. It's a VW, and therefore the one thing that many owners complain about is coil packs going, which isn't expensive but it is annoying. The timing chain is strong but the tensioners can go, though again a relatively cheap fix. One thing I would properly inspect is the front wheel arches, which have been known to rust. I hate to repeat a car, especially as this one featured in my video from last week, but it would be rude to ignore the first generation Mazda3 MPS. I won't bang on about it too much, as you can hear more about it in that video, but for your reference it has a 2.3 litre turbocharged inline-4 which makes 256 brake horsepower and will do 0 to 60 in 5.9 seconds. What I will say about it though is that this car is massively underrated and a bit of a sleeper. Not everyone is aware of the fact that Mazda built a hot hatch, and not everyone is aware of the fact that it will do 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds. My only complaint is that in my experience the interior is also pretty understated, so it's not as nice a place to be as some of the other cars on this list, but nothing a few relatively cheap mods can't fix. £4,000 is the lowest I could find these listed for online, and for 5k you're still looking at around 100,000 miles on the clock. Reliability is good on these in general, although there are some known issues with the timing chain results from a rattling VVT actuator, and turbo seals are known to wear through too. Rust is also a known issue on these. Again, if you want to hear more in depth about this car, check my previous list on sleepers under 5k. Taking the top spot in this video is the BMW 130i M Sport, which has a naturally aspirated 3 litre inline-6 engine which makes 261 brake horsepower, more than any other car on this list, and will manage 0 to 60 in 5.9 seconds, matching the Mazda. It's the only rear-wheel drive car on this list too, so perfect for those of you that like a loose rear end, no pun intended. This car came as an early compact car in the BMW lineup, sort of following on from the 3 Series compact, which had quite a disappointing run on release. The 1 Series did much better on release as a hatchback from a more premium brand. With the M Sport body kit, it looks reasonably sporty, although obviously not on a level with the 1M. It's actually not the most powerful of the hatchbacks either, as the turbocharged 135i puts out 302 brake horsepower, but has been known to have issues, so on the second-hand market people are often happy to take the 130i instead. I personally prefer the coupe, but the hatchback is definitely a more usable car, as I can't fit comfortably in the back of the coupe, but I can in the hatch. These will have pretty high miles for under 5k, and they only just start at around £4,000. That N52 engine block has done very well considering how many other BMWs from the time have had problems rear their ugly heads. Have a look at owners' reviews reviews of these cars and you'll see plenty of people absolutely adore them. One well-documented issue on these, however, is a rattling noise from the camshaft hydraulic valve lifters, so try to cold start a 130i and listen for the ticking if you're in the market for one. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I want to say a massive thank you again to the sponsor being BOTB. Don't forget to check them out, links in the description and the pinned comment. And also a massive thank you to the patrons as always for their continued support, and to you guys as well for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Listen.